Oh shit. What's up, legends? The new Borderline Justice Warbond just dropped and we already got hands on with everything right away. I tested everything out against all three factions multiple times and found some really cool stuff with this Warbond. I absolutely love the whole theme of this Warbond. As you guys may already know, I absolutely love using revolvers in games. That's why I glazed the Senator for so long. But anyways, let's go ahead and jump right into this Warbond, and at the end of the video, I'll give my complete opinion on it. Start off with the first page's primary weapon, the Marksman Rifle R6 Deadeye. If I had to explain what the Deadeye feels like in one sentence, that would be that it's essentially the Constitution, but much better. It's pretty much the Constitution with more damage, faster reload, faster fire rate, etc. So first, taking a look at the stats, we see 300 damage with only 8 shots, a fairly slow fire rate, and a ton of recoil. But realistically, this recoil isn't really felt in game, as the fire rate is so slow that in between shots, the weapon actually returns to its starting point, so it doesn't really matter. Next, we go in game to see if the weapon has any firing modes, and no, it does not. You can only change the scope range of it, much like a lot of other weapons. The Deadeye also reloads very slow, it's worth pointing that out. And this weapon obviously performs dramatically better if you pair it up with the Siege Ready Armor Passive, as that's going to increase this weapon's ammo count as well as your reload time, both of which are a major issue in this weapon. Also, the reload is a little bit too slow to try to do the fire reload trick, that is shooting once, reloading a shot, shooting again, reloading a shot, and so on. It's doable, especially with the Siege Ready armor set, but definitely nowhere near as effective as with the shotgun. So testing this out on the bot front, it goes a little bit how you might expect it. It's going to be very aim intensive, much like any other marksman rifle in the game. Like for example, for Devastators, you're gonna be wanting to hit perfectly accurate shots in their faces, or else you'll be having to take multiple shots at their body. For Troopers, you'll be one-hitting them, of course, and for Rocket Striders, 2 shots on their hips does the trick. The armor penetration does not allow you to damage Hulks, as it doesn't really scale that high, unless of course you fire at their heat sinks. It's also worth noting that you can shoot down Gunship's engine with this weapon with about 4 to 5 shots or so, but yeah. Nothing really too surprising on that end. It pretty much works as you'd expect a marksman rifle would perform against the automatons. Moving over to the terminids, this weapon one-shots all of the little guys up to a hive guard. What I find really useful is that it does a clean 2-shot kill on alpha commanders, which is always a good thing because screw those bugs. We're also looking at 2 headshots to nursing spewers if you land some nice clean headshots. And as for armored spewers, we're looking at about 3 clean headshots for each kill, which is not all that terrible. Deadeye's also got a fair decent amount of knockback and stagger, which will definitely keep the bug you're firing at off of you. And that includes Stalkers, by the way. You deal more knockback than they can handle, so Stalkers are definitely not much of an issue with this weapon. However, against the Predator strain, we can probably assume this weapon's not really going to be enough because of the multiple Stalkers that charge you down. You're probably just not really going to have enough ammo to handle multiple at the same time. Now let's go ahead and move over to the Illuminates, where we encounter a very pleasant surprise. The Deadeye, of course, one-shots faultlesses, but the real interesting thing is the Deadeye can actually one-shot Overseers as well. I did not see that coming, but yeah, you can actually one-shot Overseers if you land a clean headshot, of course. Of course, that's going to require a decent bit of aiming, but I love the fact that it rewards you so much for it. On top of that, yes, you can one-shot drones, and you can even one-shot the Harvester's Shield Generator. That's these 2 little antennas here they have above and below their heads. Those are one-shot as well. And yes, if you're wondering, you can also kill Harvesters by firing at their legs. It will take a little bit, but it's definitely doable. Overall though, I'm pleasantly surprised. Anyone that enjoys marksman rifles can be quite a useful addition on the Illuminate front. So let's move on to the next item in this Warbond, the last 58 Talon sidearm. Essentially, the Talon is a laser revolver that packs a strong punch. So yeah, we're probably going to compare it here with the Senator revolver a couple of times throughout the video, as I find them to kind of fit the same niche. The Talon, unlike the Senator, cannot do heavy armor penetration damage, but it does have several advantages over the Senator. First, let's take a look at their stats, as they both pack the same damage. But the Talon has no recoil and it fires as quickly as you can possibly click your fire button. So in terms of dishing out fast damage, the Talon wins by a large margin. As far as ammo count goes, much like the other laser weapons, the Talon has a heat up mechanic. But I find it worth noting that if you fire at a pretty fast rate, you'll get about 7 to 8 shots out of this revolver, depending how fast you fire, of course. You'll also be happy to hear that the weapon reloads in only 2 seconds if you do find yourself overheating and having to reload. And that's without any armor sets that increase reload speed, but there is a little catch. If you accidentally reload before the weapon is truly completed overheated, your character will dispose of the heatsink very slowly. I mean, it will take an extra 2 seconds, taking about 4 seconds in total to reload. So don't reload unless you absolutely have to. As for fire modes, this weapon doesn't really carry any, so yeah. I do believe it's worth mentioning though that I don't know if it's placebo or what, but this weapon seems to have an increased sway. The new armor passive also doesn't really seem to help with this sway, but using this armor set will make the Talon have literally like 0 recoil. Now, how does it actually perform on a different front? First, for the automatons, it's very similar to the Deadeye. After all, they both have the same armor penetration. The revolver is just about 100 damage short per shot though. But again, the Talon does make it up in fire rate. So all the usual. You'll be one-hitting troopers, you'll one-hit devastators to the eyes, and you can take out gunships by firing at its engines. For rocket striders, we're looking at 3 shots to the hip now to kill. But again, you can fire these extremely quickly, so I actually think it's even better than the Deadeye at that. And when we move over to the bugs, again a similar story all around, taking an extra shot here or there when comparing it with the Deadeye. We're looking at 1 shot for hunters still, and 1 shot for warriors' heads. And against the alpha commanders, we're looking at a 4-shot headshot kill, and a couple of extra shots for the armored biospewers. So it's still pretty good at like eliminating single units, but is it going to be better than the Senator? I think that's going to be up to the user. Moving on to the illuminates, let's see if it shines against overseers like the Deadeye does. I mean, against Voltlesses, it's always a 1 hit unless you hit their arms, but no surprise there. It's not as good as the Deadeye. It'll take like 2 to 3 headshots to kill an overseer, and like I mentioned earlier, this weapon feels like it has like a really strong sway, so it's pretty challenging to hit headshots with this weapon. What I can say though is that it's really good at getting rid of Harvester's shield, so that's a plus. You can also kill Harvesters with the Talon, but yeah, it's gonna take quite a while. Now let's move on to the next deadly item in this Warbond, the Dynamite. First, statistically speaking, the Dynamite deals the 3rd most amount of damage out of the throwables, only losing to the Thermite and the high explosive grenade. It does, however, have the largest blast radius in the entire game, but that does come with a trade-off. It has the longest fuse time out of every throwable in the game, sitting at a minimum of 5 seconds. Speaking of which, if you bring out your Dynamite, you can set different fuse times between 5 seconds, 15 seconds, or 60 seconds. And no, I did not find any use for the increased fuses. Someone mentioned that it could be good if you maybe dropped it on a hell bomb and let it blow up after like 15 seconds. But yeah, that'd be hard to make it work, and maybe that's about the only niche it really has. Another question I personally had for myself was, okay, maybe it's meant to be used for stealth play, like you drop a couple of dynamites in an outpost with a large timer and have it all blow up after a minute. But no, that doesn't work either. The enemies know exactly where you are once you throw that dynamite anywhere near them. I also tested throwing the dynamite on the floor and shooting it, but yeah, that doesn't do anything either. The fuse times are very questionable, but fuse times aside, the dynamite has a very large explosion radius. I think it has a great potential for clearing out outposts and bug nests by just throwing a couple of these bombs in there. I'd probably say this is the best raw damage explosive throwable right now in the game, aside from the Thermite. However, it's worth pointing out that despite its large radius, it does not really do a good job at destroying fabricators unless you actually throw it into its vent. Nor does it really close bug holes from a distance, it still needs to land inside. And no, it does not seal off Titan holes either. What I did find interesting though is if you land a dynamite inside an illuminate ship, it will destroy it regardless of whether the shield comes back up or not. So with that said, let's take a look now at the newest armor passive, the Gunslinger Passive, which increases sidearm reload speed by 40%, increases holster speed by 50%, and decreases recoil by 70%. As soon as you see this, you might immediately consider pairing this up with the Talon sidearm, but I actually find that it best fits the Senator and the Verdict. The Senator really struggles with reload speed and some recoil, and the Verdict really struggles with recoil, whereas the Talon doesn't actually struggle with either. I mean, just look at the Verdict here in this gameplay. It's so much better with this armor set. The uses for this armor set seems to be pretty limited though, unless you have a very specific love for a sidearm. Other than that, this armor set probably won't get picked as much unless players are going with the whole gunslinger theme, of course. It can enhance sidearms by a lot, but there are definitely better armor sets out there. I'll still run this armor set though with the senator, as that honestly sounds super fun. As for the simple Extricator, I have no idea how to pronounce that. I took it out for a few experiments and I found that most Bile Titans would drop a single common sample when you kill them. And I went ahead and reached out to the devs to see if we could figure out the exact drop rate of these samples, and the information I got was that the drop rate varies from enemy to enemy, so it is worth pointing that out. It seems pretty useless right now in the current state of the game unless you're a fairly new player grinding the samples. It's worth pointing out that you won't get any more than 10 extra samples, and I did only see common samples drop, but yeah, I'm not sure if that kind of varies, which by the way, I do find it to be a very small number. I mean, 10 extra samples is not going to make much of a difference. If you're looking to farm samples though, this is definitely the way to go. For me personally, this will probably never see the light of day until more ways to spend samples come into play. Could this be a hint that some new system to spend samples is coming though? I don't know, let's find out. Now, the big talk of this Warbond, the hover pack. And yes, this thing is awesome. First of all, the hover pack will lift you up in the air and you can maneuver around with it at a fairly limited speed. You'll be in the air for 6 seconds, then you'll drop down, which it will then slow your fall until you reach the ground for another 2 seconds. Meaning from liftoff until you land, you're about 8 seconds in the air. To recharge the hover pack, it will take you only 10 seconds, so it's a pretty short cooldown. It's also worth mentioning that the seconds are not accurate down to the milliseconds, okay? And what impacts that is the amount of fuel the hover pack requires to give you a safe landing. That will impact how much fuel is wasted, so it can take slightly over or under these 10-second marks. So take these 10-second recharges with a grain of salt. It can definitely be a second or two under or over. However, as far as hot versus cold planet goes, it does not play a role in how long it takes for the hover pack to recharge, so keep that in mind. Alright, so what about its performance against the different enemy fronts? First, against the bots, let's not waste too much time here. You become an extremely easy target to hit, and you gain little to no advantage by becoming such an easy target in the air. Just don't bring here against the automatons. The amount of times this would be useful would be drastically outweighed by the downsides. Once you go mid-air, you also can't cancel out the hover pack, so you just kind of have to sit there mid-air for a few seconds. I did find though that you can drop the hover pack and this happens, so that's kind of cool, I guess. As for the illuminates, it's more of a hit or miss. It definitely shines against voltlesses, but they're not usually an issue anyways. As for overseers, I don't find you gain enough of an edge over them to outweigh the fact you're an easy target, and against the harvesters it's a similar story. You can't really get too close or else this happens, and the weapons have a really strong recoil mid-air, so it's kind of alright, not terrible, but I honestly wouldn't bring it against the illuminate. Where it obviously shines here though is going to be against the terminids, as they're mostly melee units. And as far as what weapons shine with it, the concept is pretty simple. If you would benefit from high ground, then it's probably a good pick. So that's going to be stuff like flamethrowers, sterilizers, but most notably of course weapons such as the crossbow or the grenade launcher. Flamethrower also has a disadvantage that hunters kind of lock onto you regardless of you being mid-air, so this kind of might happen. Grenade launcher and crossbow though pairs extremely well with this hover pack, and I can't wait to do a full solo run with this combo alone. You can also of course utilize the hover pack to outmaneuver units such as the Impaler or the Bile Titan, or even get in situations like this where you can just flamethrower the Bile Titan's face off, and that's honestly so much fun. You can also get on top of them. That's also a cool way to kill them. Lastly, to wrap up this Warbond before we give my overall opinion, there is an honorable mention here. In your superstore right now, you can purchase the draw emote, and this emote has a pretty crazy broken mechanic. When you press this emote, your character will instantaneously draw his sidearm, meaning you can swap to the secondary weapon instantly without having to deal with any of the animation. But I went even further and I found an exploit by complete accident. If you have your primary out, then fire here, at the same time you press the draw emote, your character will fire both the primary and the secondary at the same time. So in this case here, as you're seeing in the gameplay, I'm firing both the crossbow and the senator shots at the same exact time. Is that going to stick around? No, probably not, but it's funny for now. Now that concludes our Warbond testing. Now, what do I think about this Warbond so far? What's good, what's bad, and what's situational? First, the Deadeye, I think it's alright. I don't really think it will outperform the diligence choices despite its increased damage. It's really good, but it just reloads so slowly. In group play, it's gonna be completely fine. You're not really going to be surrounded as much, and it will be a super fun weapon to use there. But is it like crazy good? Not at all. Like I said earlier, it's like the Constitution if it were better, and I still do love how it feels and looks though. Next, for the Talon, I really enjoyed this. I think it has several situations in which it outshines the Senator, specifically due to pretty much the zero recoil with extremely fast fire rate to dish out damage. On top of that, it reloads much faster too, and of course you can essentially have infinite ammo with it if you're careful. So the only way the Senator beats it is in armor penetration, not much else. If I weren't so much of an ultimatum glazer these days, I'd probably take this equally as much as the Senator. But yeah, I think this is a really good addition. As for the Dynamites, the blast radius is insane. If I wanted to have an AoE explosive grenade, this would probably be my pick, but generally speaking, I probably will never pick the Dynamite. For solo, it's not a great pick, and for group play, it'll probably kill teammates a ton, but yeah, none of that takes away from the fact that it's a great explosive grenade. As for the booster, I think it has no use these days in Helldivers 2. Personally, me and I think most veterans of Helldivers 2 have had every sample unlocked for like the past several months or so, so this will probably see no use from the vast majority of the community. Again though, it could be a hint that something is coming soon to spend our samples. Here's to hoping. The armor passive seems kind of like a niche. You pick it if you want to mess around with the Verdict or the Senator or the Talon, but I don't really think people will really pick this armor set for any other use. Like personally, I'll run this armor set and try it in like a Senator only gameplay, but that's pretty much as far as I see it being used by me, to be honest. Lastly, the hover pack. It's great, but only against the terminids. I think it will be huge on the Predator string, although I do kind of wish hunters couldn't lock onto you midair. I mean, this will surely be used by me several times on the terminids front though. I found that especially shutting down bug breaches with this and a grenade launcher would be so powerful. And the draw emote, yeah, don't nerf my boy, it's so fun. But that's pretty much it, boys. A solid themed Warbond. As far as meta goes, I don't think we got anything game-changing like the ultimatum was for the last Warbond, but I found most of the Warbond to be filled with tons of fun choices. But that's how I see today's Warbond. Thank you, Legends, very much for watching, and I'll be catching you guys on the next one. Peace.